Morning, everyone. Today's Tuesday, February 10th, 2015. It's the regular meeting of the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Good morning. Let the record reflect Commissioners Soboroff, Figueroa Villa, Kim, and Saltzman are present, and we have a quorum. Number one on the agenda, Commission comments.
Thank you. I do have one comment this morning. Later this morning, we will have a presentation with Chief MacArthur and members of the task force on transgender issues. And leading up to that, I just wanted to make a comment, and we can talk about it more in the presentation. There was a murder about a week and a half ago of a transgender woman, and I just wanted to commend the department for the special sensitivity that was demonstrated in reaching out to the community in response to that, reaching out to me, and the resolution that is there's a suspect in custody. And this was a topic that was a significant topic at the last Chiefs Forum, and the relationship between this kind of a crime and whether it's a hate crime or not. In this case, all evidence suggests it was not. It was domestic violence. But all the more reason, I think, to thank the department for how quickly it responded, how professionally it responded, and the outreach to the community so that the community members would know exactly what was going on. And I look forward, as we get into the presentation later, whether others want to talk about it more. But I want to thank the department. Thank you.
Good. Commissioners? I have one comment observation. As we see tick-ups in crime in some places, and we talk a lot about community policing and the incredible programs that we do from inside the organization, cadets, et cetera, outreach programs into the communities. I want to talk about service providers in Los Angeles, and I think that I just want to give a shout out to service providers. If we want to cut crime big time, we need people to support their favorite service provider to the at-risk. Jail is costly in many ways. Alternative programs are the best way. So I look forward to the day when we have less men's and women's jails and more boys and girls clubs. And I look forward to the day where we have less men's and women's penitentiaries and more big brothers and big sisters. I look forward to the day where people hire more interns, so we need less security guards. I look forward to the day to reading not so much about these billion-dollar art auctions as I do in people supporting service providers. So I just want to give a shout out to all the service providers in Los Angeles that do all the great things to keep people from ever having to interact with our system. And I hope that the public will double down while we're doubling down. Okay?
Thank you. Item number 2, report of the Chief of Police, Chief Beck.
Good morning, Commissioners. We had a particularly violent, thank you. We had a particularly violent weekend, 10 shootings, 4 homicides. They were almost entirely gang related. In 4 of the homicides, we have people in custody. That trend continued into today and yesterday. We had 6 more shootings citywide and 2 more homicides, including 2 were officer-involved shootings, one which just occurred while we were at breakfast. In response to this, we are shifting significant resources to Hollenbeck Division, Newton Division, 77th Division, and Southeast Division. That will include citywide motor cops. That will include our parole compliance details from all over the city. That will include Metropolitan Division. We are also placing the entire Los Angeles Police Department in uniform starting next shift. And we will continue this posture until we see some let up. These are primarily gang-involved incidents. We just, as I walked up here, reported a multiple victim shooting in 77th Division. We're concerned about this, but the department knows how to respond to it. We will use suppression systems initially, and then we'll work with the mayor's grid office to follow up and see if we can ease some of the tensions and remove some of the shooters from the community. So that's the most timely assessment of crime. We continue to see, of course, we're only 1 month into the year, but continue to see an increase in both violent and a lesser increase in property crime. Gives us an aggregate picture of a almost 10% increase in Part 1 crime over last year. Still early in the year. These shifts are largely driven by the gang issues that I talked about, and to a lesser extent, domestic violence. Gang crime is up incrementally, except for in the category of gang assaults, and gang assaults are up significantly, about 25%. So the department is dealing with this issue. It is an issue that is primarily concentrated in the 4 divisions that I spoke of, but it is an issue that is, to a lesser degree, citywide. And we saw shootings throughout the city over the weekend. So the department continues to deal with that. Last night, I know many of you watched, there was a televised pursuit, resulted in an officer-involved shooting. Of course, the Police Commission will review that officer-involved shooting for propriety, as will I. But leaving out the specifics of the shooting, I have to say that it was a well-managed pursuit, and that I was proud of the performance of the Los Angeles Police Department. Of course, that does not prejudice our review of that shooting incident. Traffic collisions, I know there's a significant discussion across the street in City Council today about hit and runs. I welcome that. We welcome the city's advanced the city's information warning system, as well as potential for reward. I will note that we appear to be having some effect, although it was very early in the year. As I said before, hit and runs are down about 10.5% compared to 2013, and down about 13% compared to 2014. The most serious categories of hit and runs, those where someone is killed or seriously injured, are down about 10% compared to last year, and about 43% compared to the prior year. So we're making some progress there. Personnel statistics, we have 9,869 sworn personnel on payroll. That does not include 52 recruits that just entered the academy this past week. So that is a robust size class, and we're very happy to see that happening. We have 2,742 civilian personnel. That does not include 465 vacant positions that we hold in the civilian classifications. We have about 500 police reserve officers, 373 specialist volunteers, 62 chaplain counselors, and 6,074 cadets in our program. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Chief.
We do have 2 public comment cards. We have Mr. Herman and Mr. Ted Hayes.
Mr. Herman, walk the other way so we can save some time, please. Just walk the other way so we can save some time. Mr. Hayes, will you go first, please, sir? Our time's important, too.
Mr. Sobroff, you don't have to be so contemptuous. The real problem of insulting the public is your comment towards me. Again, contemptuous, sir. But let me address this so we can't always say or rely on what comes out of the mouth of some. Mr. Beck is well aware of the violence in Los Angeles. It has not, definitely has not decreased due to the provisions provided by this commission to do a thorough investigation and audit on the statistics that are reported by our chief of police. It's troubling. Yeah, you can laugh all you want, but the impression of arrogance by those who are elected to sit as a commission should pay attention to the public for public interest. So contemptuous, contemptuous falls on the grounds of scornful. Mr. Beck heard the comments in Echo Park last week. The majority of the public there were not happy. They concluded with their decisions of advice and suggestions. And it's all about dollars. Like anything else in the city of Los Angeles, it's all about the money. Or I should say, the Benjamins to you, Mr. Steve Soboroff. And although you did not make it for mayor, in best interest to the public, because now they get to see your performance here as
Mr. Herman, keep your
point out
comments relevant.
the issue on violence and the out of control
Thank you.
problems in Hollywood. Thank you.
Morning, Mr. Hayes, sir.
Thank you. As a bit of introduction to this is something you're unfamiliar with because you don't approach this, although it's a necessary function of the police department and every police agency. As an introduction, in India, a country just emerging from third world status, they're having 5 tunnel drilling and boring machines drilled from their urban areas out to the hinterland. We have the same thing happening on Crenshaw. It's called the Crenshaw-Lax line. Lax means LAX. The line does not go to LAX. But it goes up and down, up and down, up and down 5 different times because it's cheaper to run at grade to board continuously to its destination. Wikipedia. Over 100 motorists and pedestrians have been killed by the Blue Line level crossing since 1990. That's because it's at grade. And there have been more than 800 collisions, making it the line the most deadliest and most collision-prone line in the entire country. When you put a train underground and require people to drive across the tracks and walk across the tracks, you will kill them. Here's a police car being hit by the Blue Line. There are 2 photographs like this, 2 different cars. Here's a bus being hit by the Blue Line. Passengers. Here's the man responsible, the premeditated murderer, Mark Ridley Thomas, and the Board of Supervisors and your mayor. The mayor was on the air talking about something today, saying that Blue Line will take you where you want to go, but it won't take you to the airport. That's a damn lie.
Item number 3 on the agenda, the report of the Executive Director, Mr. T-Fank.
Morning, Mr. President, members of the Commission. No report today.
We do have one public comment card. We have Mr. Herman.
Mr. T-Fank, I'd like to thank you for that well-performed audience we had in Echo Park. We need these type of community transparency so that the public can realize how the diversity of everyone involved in our communities has some say-so, and how we stick to the guidelines of the Brown Act without interruptions. It went very well, and I commend you for keeping it in that controlled manner where all of us had full participation up to the very end, from 36 to 39 speakers, and I being the first. I just want to say thank you. Keep up. Continue providing us those outlets to express not just our animosity, but more so to communicate effectively with those responsible for taking appropriate action towards the public and for our well-being. Because you well know that in City Hall that the Brown Act violations continue to be a problem, and you open the doors to show us that we're not going to have this ongoing situation occurring under Ralph M. Brown Act 54950 to 54963. And I'll give you back the remaining time, Mr. Speakers. Thank you.
Okay, we're now on item number 4, the report of the Inspector General, Mr. Bustamante.
Thank you, Commissioners. I have nothing to report today.
We do have one public comment card. We have Mr. Herman.
I hate these words. They deal with crime. Like I could care less of what that means. You do care, they say to all of us and to all of you. A little or a lot, and I definitely know that you do care. So I'm reaching out to our Inspector General for the follow-up of my petition about 2 weeks ago regarding the insult by Paul Koretz, a public official, for inappropriately putting his hands on me and taking physical action on me in October of 2014. I expect Inspector General to follow up in that investigation with IA, which is Internal Affairs for some of you don't know, and expedite reasonable cause for not taking your portion or your part to conduct business in the interest of the public's welfare and safety. So, Mr. Bustamante, I was injured that day at the sacrifice of some political, power-headed misuse of power. So I just want to make sure the public is aware, and all of you here today know that it's people like this that we don't need doing business for its constituents. And I, a stakeholder and a resident in the city of Los Angeles and the state of California, demand action and further review on this, Mr. Alexander A. Bustamante. Thank you.
We also have Mr. Ted Hayes.
The X-ray machine's not fixed. Why am I talking to you about that, sir? Because we spend millions of dollars on things that are untested, unproven, and unseen, like cameras. We don't know what the pictures look like, do we? Not one time did these dupes, the public of L.A., ever get a chance to see what they were buying, an expression as far as a photograph of what the picture was like. Well, you can go out there now and find out the X-ray machine doesn't work. Now, you have a lawyer here. He's not a criminal lawyer. But he might be able to tell you whether or not they need probable cause or reasonable suspicion to do a invasive search. If so, what's happening outside is not proper. Maybe a constitutional violation. I don't know. All I know is we ought to spend the money to either get a new machine, a refurbished machine, or fix the one we already have. And stop having us go through the ordeal of opening all of our luggage, all of our everything we have, laying it out, letting them search and rumble through it to see whether there's anything that might be dangerous. That's why we bought these machines, so we could find a danger. Maybe you can bring a bum-sniffing dog in. Whatever you need, do that, because this is a secure facility, and you people, all of us, must be safe. So this second time I brought this machine issue before you, and it's kind of a bit of a test to see whether anything can be accomplished if you bring it to the police head, the top people. Can they do anything? Or do they think it's not worthy of being done? I don't know. But I need some response, some kind of a response.
Thank you. We're now on item number 5. Item number 5 consists of information items and filed items relative to noise variances and special event permits submitted for the period ending February 6, 2015. Item number 6, presentations. Do we have any presentations?
Yes, we do have one presentation. Mr. President's presentation to Captain 2 Scott Sargent, and I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you. Scott, will you come up? You're already on your way up. All the way up.
You want him up here, sir? Come on up here, Scott.
Yeah, come on up. Chief, will you join me in making this presentation? Scott, during the period August 2007 to January 2015, you were assigned as the commanding officer, Use of Force Division. While in this assignment, members of the Board of Police Commissioners would meet with you and your staff on a weekly basis in closed session to receive presentations and adjudicate incidents of categorical use of force by LA police officers. The Board of Police Commissioners wishes to express our appreciation to you for your dedication, commitment, attention to the most important function. The information and insight your staff provided to police commissioners is beneficial as we considered these serious incidents and ultimately made our decision in adjudicating the use of force. We want to thank you for your dedication, commitment, and devotion to the LA Police Department and wish you continued success in your career with the LA Police Department as you move to your next command assignment, Commanding Officer, Jail Division. Congrats and thank you. Commissioners, come on. Thanks, Scott. Mr. T?
Yes, sir. And the picture, my gosh.
With that suit on?
And on the count of
Where's
three.
Alex? Come on.
I'm going to have a wide enough angle.
Why doesn't the cameraman stand here and we'll just look at what's
There you go. On the count of three. 1, 2, and 3. Good, let me just check that. One more time, please. 1, 2, and 3. Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I say a few words? Since we have the same initials, if you have any monogram stuff, you need to leave. I'm into it.
I've been in this assignment for about 7.5 years, and it's been
As a speaker.
Put your feet up.
Yes, please. It's been an absolute honor to do what I do in service to the department and to the men and women that are out there serving us on the line. I think this responsibility is huge.
Okay.
I'm turning it over to Captain Brian Johnson, who's going to carry it on in fine fashion. And anyway, just thank you to everybody who has supported me absolutely through all these years, and I hope I've made a contribution during this period of time. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We're now on item number 7, consent agenda items. These items are considered to be routine and non-controversial, upon which the board is provided with adequate information for approval without inquiry or discussion. Would a commissioner wish to pull an item as special, 7A through 7E?
No, I move approval.
Second?
All those in favor?
Okay, we're now on item number 8, regular agenda items. Would a commissioner wish to pull an item as special, 8A through 8D?
Just a
8A is verbal, and I think we should hear from the department on 8C and 8D. I would move approval of item 8B.
Second?
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we will begin with 8A, Department's verbal presentation and discussion relative to the work plan being undertaken by the Transgender Working Group.
Okay, so we'll do that.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I'm not sure what you want to do.
No, I just point of information.
Yeah.
Okay, so, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Morning.
It's an important day for us, and we appreciate your coming.
So I am Assistant Chief Sandy Jo MacArthur, and this is our third report to the Police Commission. And I just want to say that what the working group started off as was a transgender working group. And because of the good diversity that we have on the team, we actually have, we call it the LGBTQ working group now, because we have several subcommittees that are working on a variety of different things. And today I have 3 of my subcommittee co-chairs with me. One was not able to be here, Tara Slevin, and I'll talk about what we're working on with that. And so I'm going to do a quick overview, and then I'm actually going to turn it over to each of my subcommittee chairs to talk about the points that they're working on. We formed the group in 2014, and we've had 3 meetings. We meet every other month right now. And our goal was to really increase the community involvement in the department's outreach to our LGBT community, and also to identify specific areas that we can work on. And Commissioner, you know, we do the forums quarterly, at least 3 times a year. Sometimes try to do it quarterly. And what we've found is there's a committed group of folks that were willing to actually roll their sleeves up and dig into some of the issues and get a little bit more into the depth of it. And we've asked for volunteers, and we now have a nice group of people that are willing to meet. We are, and I don't have, oh, here's my list. I was going to say we have met representatives from Banastar, the LA LGBT Center, Trans Interactions, the Office of the Inspector General, the City Attorney's Office, and the District Attorney's Office, and a variety of other advocacy groups, of which 2 are represented here today. With me today, starting on my immediate left, I'm making sure I'm doing my on my immediate left.
You know your left from right.
Yeah, I
by
do.
now,
I
after all
know.
these
I'm
years.
better at this point in my life. Is Karina Samala? She'll be reporting on the specific transgender subcommittee, and then next to her is Troy Eric Isaac, and he is our youth co-chair. And then next on the far left is Christopher, and I always pronounce his name incorrectly. So Christopher A. Easy for him to say. And he is really focusing on our training with Dr. Pinnell. The co-chair with Chris is Dr. Pinnell. And what we're first starting to look at is the recruit and updating the recruit. I'm going to let Chris talk about that and also share with his experience. He's gone through our instructor academy as well. So the 4 areas there's a variety of things that we've picked out, but the 4 areas we're diving into right now are improving reporting. You mentioned earlier about our homicide, and one of the things in general with reporting is just these groups are very uncomfortable sometimes coming forward, and also the response of the department when we do respond to an incident. And obviously a homicide is a little bit different, but when we're talking about our domestic violence or hate crimes in particular, those are 2 areas that we're very, very concerned with and we're actually working on. And that's what Tara from the LA LGBT Center is working on with me. We're actually, and the City Attorney's Office is working, and we're looking at creating a reporting sheet that people will understand that when certain things occur, they are actually a victim of domestic violence and they are actually a victim of hate crimes. And so she's working right now with me on drafting that. The co-chair of that committee will ultimately be the department's hate crime coordinator. And our goal is to be able to, when we start to do some online reporting, not that we want to report hate crimes online, but we want this information to be accessible so anybody can get on and see that these are the elements of a hate crime. These are the elements of domestic violence. And if they're going to an advocacy group to report it, they can bring the form with them. But our goal is to make it a form that is LAPD with its title on it, so our officers will be able to actually look at the form and attach it to a crime report. So those are the kinds of things we're working on in that area. We're also looking at updating recruit training, which I'm going to turn over to Chris, if you want to talk a little bit about that on our recruit, what we're doing with Luann.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning, Chris.
My name is Christopher Argyros, and I'm not sure that I am actually pronouncing it correct either. And I'm the manager of the Anti-Violence Project at the Los Angeles LGBT Center. That's out of the Legal Services Department, and we are a service provider, of course. We serve victims, survivors of violence. And it's a privilege and an honor, of course, to collaborate with Chief MacArthur and with Dr. Pinnell on this project, and of course all of my esteemed colleagues. We are working to improve and enhance the gender and sexual diversity trainings that are currently being offered at the Academy, and we're hoping to also expand that to in-service. My colleague, Drian Juarez, and I are both post-certified, and we actually conduct similar cultural competency trainings all over the city. We've done these trainings for other law enforcement, for government agencies, for medical providers, for other nonprofits, even for bigwigs at the TV networks. So we're intentional about focusing these trainings on interactions with the transgender community. And we do this because the transgender community is often misunderstood, and there are harmful myths that continue to affect transgender people's lives. The myths and the ignorance are insidious, and they perpetuate violence against our community. The critical need for these trainings has been made even more pressing recently. As many of you know, that there have been 3 reported homicides of transgender women within 4 months in our city. And this marks a dramatic increase in fatal attacks against transgender people in our city. All of the victims were women of color, and as Commissioner Saltzman mentioned earlier, the most recent was about a week and a half ago, and it was a domestic violence homicide in which the victim, Yasmin Payne, was stabbed multiple times, and then she was lit on fire in her apartment. While these crimes were not all directly related, they are also not isolated. They did not occur in a vacuum. This violence is part of a culture that continues to devalue the lives of transgender people, and especially transgender women of color. So that's why these trainings that we're doing are so important, and we want to work to make sure that this dominant culture of bias and discrimination against transgender people is not reflected in the actions or the inactions of officers. Despite the continued threat to safety, we do have a vibrant and a visible transgender community here in Los Angeles. It takes strength and courage to live authentically as a transgender person in the face of such violence. Even to walk down the street is a brave act for many transgender women. Our goal with the training is that New Retreats will not only have the tools to best serve and respond, but will also be inspired to honor and protect this very diverse and beautiful part of our community. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for all you do.
Thanks, Chris. The third area that we're working on specifically is our youth. And Troy, I'll give the microphone to Troy, and he can talk about our youth. One thing I want to say, specifically talking about what you were saying earlier about really activating our service providers throughout the city. This is one of the areas that we're really focusing on because there's so many service providers out there, but we're not doing a coordinated effort, and we're hoping that our group can start to coordinate some of those efforts. So I'm going to give Troy the mic, and Commissioner Salzman understands we might have to cut Troy off after 30 minutes. No, I gave him a couple of minutes. Just teasing,
But
Troy.
I would like to talk to you about that because the foundation world, I think, as it's coordinated, the foundation world responds better to coordinated efforts than they do individual efforts, and certainly this is a worthy one. So call me anytime.
Good morning.
Morning, sir.
I am very, very pleased to be here because for the last week or so, I have been working very, very hard in the Hollywood area with youth. I am so happy to say that I got 2 youth hired from the LGBT Center. They are still homeless, and I am still trying to find housing, for them because housing is so hard to find. A lot of young people do not want to go to shelters. They want to work it out their own way, but they just feel that that's a restriction that they just don't want to have. So I'm working on doing some working groups, workshops in Hollywood at my friend's place and in South Los Angeles with my Brother Crusade, the Brotherhood Crusade, which is also working with the Bloom Agency, which deals with youth in probation. The idea of this is to allow young people to run the workshop. LAPD would co-host the workshop. They would bring their concerns, their problems to the table, and a solution to their problems and concerns to the table. LAPD and the community would counter in and figure out how to come up with a resolve to their issues. I think that it's very important, and it hasn't happened yet, but LAPD should have a LAPD official mentorship program. So when a young person is walking down the street with an officer, or an older person is walking down the street with an officer, that doesn't mean that they're in trouble. It just means they're being mentored, or it could just mean they're going out to lunch. That's all I'm simply saying. We have a lot of work to do. I am very touched by the young people that I'm helping. I'm very touched with my sponsors in Hollywood for allowing me to bring the youth into these restaurants so I can conversate with them, get their points of views. I'm very pleased. I think we're on the right path. Tomorrow I will be with both captains in Hollywood trying to map out how we're going to do this workshop. I believe that we could be successful. A lot of people don't know anything about My Friend's Place. The young people that I've met in the last week do not have problems with LAPD. They're more concerned about the BID security guards that are out there on the bicycles. They're more concerned about that. I would have to say this is not an LGBTQ issue. This is a youth, this is a humanity, this is a homeless issue that we should address and form. Thank you.
Thank you, Troy.
I'm
And then-
going to appoint a very small subcommittee of Commissioner Saltzman and myself to take you to lunch.
This is great.
And he likes to eat. Thank you very much, Troy. And then the last subcommittee that we have right now is our transgender outreach that is co-chaired with Karina, and I'll let her speak.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Karina Samala, and I'm also with the Transgender Issues Committee with Sandy Chair McCarthy Working Group. I was also the chair of the City of Los Angeles Human Relations Commission Transgender Working Group that developed the recommended policies and procedures for the LAPD and in their interaction with transgender individuals, which our Chief Back had also approved and provide guidelines to improve transgender community relations with law enforcement agencies. Unfortunately, some community members and activists have expressed their unhappiness with LAPD because of their past and present issues with law enforcement and the civilian violence that still exists towards our community. I assure them that I am and others have been working very closely with LAPD to gain their support and improve the procedures and policies with transgender individuals. I explained that LAPD has been fully engaged, and I encourage them to participate in our joint efforts to continue to improve LAPD relationships with the transgender community. Therefore, I would like to suggest that we set up a meeting between LAPD and those that are unaware of our ongoing progress at the City of Los Angeles Human Relations Office to discussions and to promote mutual understanding and increase the community's trust and willingness to cooperate with our department. And this, thank you.
Thank you.
And Karina is working on setting that meeting up for us right now.
We'll expand our lunch to include all three of you guys.
So that is
okay,
an
Brad?
overview of where we're going with our working group. One thing before I close is I am retiring. April 1st is my first day of retirement.
Oh, turn off the microphone, please.
Stop. And I want to, the chief and I have been working on my replacement, and I'm here to happily turn it over beginning April 1 to B. Gramala,
Oh, wonderful.
Deputy Chief B. Gramala, who I believe is in the audience.
She was here. Oh, there she is.
B has worked tirelessly in these issues for years, and she's been my partner in this for the last 5. So they're in good hands, and I'll stay on as a reserve and still be part of our working group.
Great.
And just from the department's standpoint, I want to thank Sandy Joe. You know, you have done an incredible job with this group and with obviously many other things. And I'm so happy that we can make the transition to B. It's really not even a transition in this case because B has been so involved in the process. So all of you know B, and Sandy Joe, of course, will continue to be involved in a little different role, but B will still ably represent you.
And one of our other members has shown up, Jonathan. He's also part of our working group and comes to every group. So thank you for being here.
Jonathan, welcome, sir. You want to say anything?
I'm with the Workforce Center, so I'm addressing jobs so that youth don't have to sell their bodies on the street. They have opportunities to work within a number of industries, and so I'm working with employers. I'm part of Downtown Workforce Center, and my goal is to help bridge the gap between employers and employment opportunities for not only for our youth, but as well as our adults. Thank you for letting me share.
Come to lunch, too. Okay.
Can't we?
Rob?
Sure.
I just want to clarify
go ahead.
something. Karina, you mentioned something about civilian violence and LAPD not being happy with. I didn't hear it very well. What did you mean?
Some of our community members unhappy because of the violence that still exists on civilian violence. I'm talking about civilian violence that exists within our community. the murders.
Are you talking about how LAPD responds to that?
Well,
They're not happy with how
they are
LAPD
unhappy of their past because of their past experiences and also the mistrust that they have on the department, which we are changing.
Okay.
Good.
And that's one of the reasons I put Karina in charge. I'm actually her co-chair. She chairs that committee. But we realized it's very difficult for them to come to PD headquarters. So she's setting up meetings outside so we can start to get a situation where they're comfortable, where people can come and forward, and then B and I are going to work really closely with the committee.
Thank you.
Because some of them are still unaware of the progress that we have dealing with the Los Angeles Police Department.
Thank you.
And some of the fear of reporting violence in the community is exacerbated by other layers of vulnerability, like lack of immigration status and other marginalization, I'm sure. So I'm so glad to hear about your work together with Chief MacArthur.
Thank you.
Mr. Saltzman?
Thank you. I have two comments and a question. First is I just want to thank you all. Thank the volunteers, the community service provider folks who put in so much time and are helping make so much effort, and the department, which has made tremendous progress. And I share the chief's comments about Chief MacArthur and also welcome Chief Kamala, who has great experience with this, and I look forward to continuing to work with her. And, of course, the rest of the department as well, the operational side where changes really have been made, and in custody as well. So thank you for that. Most what I'd like to do, and we may be done, is I just wanted to make sure that we heard from members of the working group. If you have questions for us or questions that haven't been answered, if you have concerns about things that are happening or proposals that you think we ought to be considering, I hope you would take this opportunity or another to let us know. The one specific question I had was just asking if you would talk a little bit about the training in the academy with respect to the transgender issues. I would be interested. I think it'd be good for my colleagues just to hear a little bit, not a major presentation, but a description of what you do, how it's responded to, how that goes.
Sure. So currently the trainings, which we are working on revising in part because we want them to be updated, we want them to be more in line with what POST is teaching now, especially in terms of being more engaging and using more kind of tools to learn. So, but currently the training is, we go over, of course, terminology, what words to use, what words not to use, basics about interacting with the trans community, but also try to instill a deeper understanding of what do we mean when we say transgender? What does the transgender community look like in Los Angeles? And provide a little bit more of a background on what the trans experience is like and what are some of the specific challenges that transgender people face in our communities.
And what's your sense of how that, I mean, how does it go over? How is there reaction, no reaction, positive, negative, question?
We've actually seen an evolution with that, a change with that, in that new recruits now seem much more receptive and already coming in, I think because they're young, already coming in with, and there's a lot of, media out there, news regarding trans issues in the trans community and famous trans people on television and whatnot. So I think that we've seen much more receptive audience among new recruits. And at the Anti-Violence Project, we have over 300 survivors of violence coming through our doors every year. And so we hear a lot about how law enforcement is doing. And I think that the majority of, if I could generalize, the majority of maybe the issues where the community members feel that they are not being responded to appropriately are often coming from older officers and members of the force. So that's one reason why we talked about doing this as an in-service training as well, right, so that those people who did not get this when they were new recruits are also, have these tools and this information.
Thank you. And any questions, comments, suggestions, concerns?
I have a question for you. I would like you to come to our next meeting in April, if that would be good, because I think that'll give you a really good understanding, and then they'll be able to have a dialogue with you on these issues.
Let me know when it is, and I will do my best.
I'll get you the date.
Great, thank you.
I have a question.
Great.
Is there a way that we could possibly partner with the Hollywood hostels? Because if for instance, if you give a person a job, they need housing. So it's kind of hard to get them, to their job place if they don't have a foundation. So is there a way that a partnership could happen where they will give them housing until they get their first paycheck so they're able to pay their way?
I think those are the things that we would like to discuss, and we have the city attorney's office coming, and hopefully we'll have a representative from the mayor at that meeting so we can discuss those things, because it really is a broad perspective from the city who needs to be involved in that. But it's a great idea.
Thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you. I really appreciate all the work you're doing. Thank you.
And we do have one public comment card. We have Mr. Herman.
Angelinos, I have no differential views towards people who decide to make their decisions on their life. But the Bible says God hates sinners. And in the same token, when it comes to the forms and decisions of those who wish to consider transgender or homosexuality, that's a choice. I don't condone it. That's your choice. But what does God's word, the law, state? I know that Batman applies reference for the law in the city of Los Angeles. Are we to say that he's a transgender person? So the violence involved towards people who decide to make a change in their life to become what they are not comfortable of identity is, has nothing to do with giving a certain point of view towards one group of people versus another. I call that discrimination. Because from my standpoint, we're all equal, rich or poor, blessed or not blessed, given a position, whether it's political gain or political favor. So, however way and manner you decide to look at this issue of topic, I say to you in all honesty, then go participate with them in their culture and their society and see if it's relevant to yours.
Next.
Thank you. We're now on item 8C, Department's report dated January 23rd, 2015, relative to the Operation South Bureau Vice Command Accountability Performance Audit, IAID number 13-092.
I just think that there was one question, and let us.
That's for 8D.
Okay. Oh, did you?
We can just.
Yeah, actually, I do.
Okay, go. Yeah.
I'd like to understand a little bit better than I do about, with respect to VICE, what prompts enforcement actions, based on complaints, based on some strategic approach, what brings about the actual, particularly the undercover operations that go on?
And I'll refer that question to our chief.
Okay.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Let me make sure I understand your question, sir. So,
Well, one of the complaints that I hear periodically about VICE operations is that the members of the community suggest to me that the department is enforcing, particularly with respect to using plainclothes in areas where there's inappropriate sexual activity, where there essentially are no complaints. And so my question is that accurate? Does the department, can you demonstrate that the enforcement operations that you do are based on complaints? And is that something that it would make sense to have included in this kind of a performance audit for Vice Command? And if not, how would you help me think about that problem? Did I do a little better that time?
Yes, sir. I can get the first part of it, and I think Lieutenant Biese can get the second part as far as should it be included in this report. One of the things that we focus on in terms of our vice activities is number one, the community concerns. So in South Bureau, of course, the Figueroa and Western Quarters, that's where it's the most commercial. That's where you see the women out on the streets, and so a lot of them young girls. But particularly right now, we have put together a human trafficking task force because what we're finding out is that many of these young ladies are being forced out there by gang members. So that is where a lot of our focus is going. In terms of lewd activity and all that, that's a very, very small percentage of our arrests. When it's commercial, when it's complained of and it's out in conspicuous locations, we will address that. But the bigger issue is these women that are, and young girls, quite frankly, that are being forced to be out on the streets selling their bodies. And that's a much larger issue that we're trying to put some focus on.
This is probably not a great question for South Bureau. I doubt that if any of their activity is based on non-commercial, consensual lewd conduct. This is. I think that if you have specific complaints, then we can refer them to the department's vice coordinator through Detective Bureau. I will say that the guidance that we give vice operations is that they work on complaints, but they also work on areas that create crime, and whether that is street robberies or prostitution or other things, it doesn't solely rest on citizen complaints. Sometimes it's criminal conduct that occurs, oftentimes drawn by the crowds of people and things like that. So we could look at a way to include this. I could have maybe Jody look at it. I don't know how exactly we would be able to do that, but it might be something we can explore in our vice audits.
Thank you. I'd appreciate that, at least going forward in the areas where the lewd conduct activity.
Probably primarily a West Bureau issue.
Primarily West Bureau.
I just wanted to clarify, you want to make sure that we're looking at issues that are actually a complaint?
Yeah, I guess what I would find helpful, and I find both the commander's response and the chief's response helpful, that the enforcement, as I understand it, is driven partly by complaints and partly by what appears to be associated criminal activity. And to the extent you're able to demonstrate that in the audit, I would find that helpful.
I'll go back and look at that, if we could look at where they're working and what kind of crime is occurring at that location.
Yeah, and I agree.
Probably
primarily
Northeast and Hollywood.
Okay, and because primarily we look at the work that they have done to make sure it's complying with policy, procedure, and constitutional placing.
And Jody, Chief Pacing will work with you on that. He's over there. He knows what we're talking about.
Absolutely.
And both for Chief Pacing and for Jody, please don't go. I'm not asking you to do a huge, major effort. I'm trying to understand this problem, and to the extent it's a narrow problem, that's fine with me. So as you get into it, please talk to me so that I haven't sent you on a wild goose chase.
Absolutely, and any benefit that it can help with the department and the commission, seeing where issues are, we want to help.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Move approval of the item.
Excuse me, Commissioner, we do have two public comment cards. We have Mr. Ted Hayes and Mr. Herman.
I looked at the table of contents on this item. I didn't see human trafficking anywhere. Where does human trafficking come in with the police department? White slavery is what they call it, okay? So I'm a little concerned about this because you can still see the prostitutes active on Figueroa. It's called the Whole Stroll. In fact, one time, a former police chief pointed out before he was chief how at the 77th Division they would arrest a certain person in the, what you call speakeasy, gambling dives, and they rotate these people just to make it look like they're active doing police work and vice. But this is a big city. This is not a Quaker town. So I want to know, where does human trafficking come in if it's not associated with white slavery, with prostitution. That's what I keep hearing. That's what the exposés talk about. So where does the police department talk about it? Now, we don't impound, except you'll find signs on Figueroa pointing out if you're engaged with a prostitute as a John, we will impound your car. Go there and look at the sign. You didn't know that, did you? But that's what the sign says. They know prostitution is active. Go to the arraignment court, you'll find judges telling the prostitutes, if you're determined to be HIV positive, you can be charged with
Mr. Herman?
premeditated murder. Go sit in an arraignment court sometime and see the girls come through from Vegas, everywhere, and you see that something might not be quite the way it ought to be. All right? So, thank you for your time. I still know the whole stroll on Figueroa, South Figueroa is very active. Now, I don't know a prostitute when I see one. These experts do. But the Johns know them, and the Johns solicit, and the Johns deal.
Mr. Herman?
Could white slavery be the truth behind the city of Los Angeles? Is Northeast or Hollywood blind by the Johns and the action of prostitution? The history books show that prostitution was developed in our local government in bathhouses. I wouldn't know, but according to documents based on history, and history repeats itself, that the law can't control the problem of prostitution, because even in the White House, prostitution takes fold. So it's not that anyone should be pointing fingers at, because for the one finger I point at any one of you, 3 are pointing back to me. Not that I slept with a prostitute, but it has come to my mind. So don't say to me that you're doing a fantastic job of preventing prostitution or taking the war on prostitution, because if you are, Mr. Soboroff, taking action on the war of prostitution, then start in the valley where it is rampant, like a disease mulching from the trees, and people go to pick the fruit of sin. It's an embarrassing topic, but many of you know a person who's been involved in the activity of taking on Johns and prostitution.
Next.
There are no other comment cards, sir.
Move approval of the item.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We're now on item 8D, Department's report dated February 6, 2015.
Thank you.
Relative to the arrest, booking, and charging reports audit, IAID number 14-0427.
Again,
Thank you.
I think we just have it.
Sorry.
I held this item, and the question I have has been answered. So.
14-027.
Thank you for the report. I just have one question. I just needed further information on objective number 3H, since that the performance was very well in all categories, and then except for that one, and so I just wanted to understand that where there were reports that did not meet the standard, it was because the heading was not written in its entirety or only pieces of it, and maybe if I could just learn more about the reason why there are only pieces of that
Right.
heading in place for the arrest reports that didn't meet the standard.
Yes. Good morning, Commissioner John Peters from Office of Operations. It's a good question, and so just to give you a little background, what historically had been one of the headings on the arrest reports was photos or photographs, and the information was contained in that section. And then as technology has improved and we started seeing things like digital recordings and information like that, the relatively new order of 2013, I believe, expanded that heading to include all those other things. So in looking at this audit in the areas where we did not meet the standard, there was still a heading there of photos or photographs, and the information was there. And if we included those in terms of the result, 94%, we would have had a 94% compliance rate. So really it's a matter of us getting the information out, and I think a lot of the officers are using a template in terms of having their arrest report headings on a template, and what we need to do is push that new template out so that everybody's using that, standardizes that heading, and we won't see that issue occurring anymore. But the spirit of it is being met in terms of the necessary information is being included.
Okay, and so so that's helpful, and so there wasn't any relationship then to sort of misuse or underuse of the new technology in the headings not being complete.
That's correct.
Okay.
In fact, in the reports we saw, although the heading may have said photographs, we still saw the inclusion of video and things of that nature.
Okay, so all the evidence was still in the arrest reports.
That is
Yeah,
correct.
just not the appropriate heading. Okay, that's it.
We do have one public comment card. We have Mr. Herman.
Now, when filing for arrest and booking with reports, wouldn't we conclude that these reports were inadequately fulfilled? I thought the cooperation of the training department within the portion of LAPD was a mission to help all you citizens understand that there's adequate training, adequate performance, and the resources of federal and state dollars to appropriately train our officers to timely fill reports, but they did not meet the standards. And although the percentage here was spoken of by the fine officer there, there's still inappropriateness to use federal and state dollars to train our officers adequately. We wouldn't have this topic of conversation today. Rather than put people in jails, wouldn't you agree that diversions from some of these reports, some alleged, others presumed innocent until proven guilty, are determined? But who would say, I'm wrong? Because I know the commission's never been arrested, right, Mr. Soboroff? So you wouldn't know what it's like to be treated by the reports inadequately filed against you. You think about it, because I still believe in the civil rights of every person, equal, and access towards them.
Okay. Do we have a motion for approval?
Move approval of the item.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
We're now at
Guys.
public comment. We have 4 comment cards. We start with Mr. George Pappas, followed by Mr. Herman, Jerry Dietrich, and Ted Hayes.
Morning, sir.
I came here to repeat my request from my wife, but first I must address the following. Mr. Soboroff, you are a Hebrew American. The flag sits at the back of the room. It does not stand in the front. And you did not say the Pledge of Allegiance to the United States of America, my country and your country. Okay. My wife is the responsibility of the husband by custom, laws, and all that, unless you make laws that are contrary. The husband has the primary responsibility to protect his wife from predators. And if necessary or learned, he has the right to kill a dog or a wolf or whatever we might call him. Again, I said that. The husband is the primary. Should you see the predators and the people that caused my wife to disappear, do they deserve your police protection to hide her from me? And I stay home and crying, and you policemen mock me for crying? I stand in front of a gunman, a Marine, and he fires one bullet, I don't even flinch. But my wife is gone, I cry. Ladies, you go home and tell your husbands, would you cry if I was missing? If he says no, get rid of the son of a bitch. Find a good man. I think I had enough, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
But put the flag in the front and say the Pledge of Allegiance and be an American first and a Hebrew later or Mexican later or whatever else you want to be. America is for Americans, and we should stand for America.
Mr. Herman.
Good morning. And leading to my issue here about protecting the rights of individuals who are qualified individuals with disabilities, I find it that under ADA Title II, that activities of the state and local governments have violated those safeguards. Public accommodations must comply with the very basic non-discrimination requirements that prohibit exclusion, segregation, Mr. Soboroff, and equal treatment, Mr. Soboroff. Effective communication with people with disabilities should be and only be your responsibility to educate and train your officers, because I'm sick and tired of reading reports and hearing reports of the violence conducted towards individuals who suffer with disabilities. It's discrimination, violation of the American Disability Act, violation of the city charter to protect its citizens. So would it be inappropriate if I stood here and raised my hand in this fascist way and say that this is public comment? And look how strong, without saying a word, it becomes. So ADA compliance should be in best interest of the public, and I suggest you do an audit on your training process. Thank you.
Jerry Dietrich.
Good morning. My name is Jerry Dietrich, and I'm with the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. I've been coming to these meetings for some time now. I've seen how this commission goes out into the community to hear from the residents what the problems are they're having with the LAPD. This group has gone recently to Lincoln Heights, South Central, Canoga Park, back to South Central and Echo Park to hear from the people. This group is to be commended for making themselves available to the public. It is not easy for some people to come here in the morning, and for some it is impossible. I am fortunate to be retired, and therefore I can come. The people have spoken. I think you have heard them. My request is that you use what you have heard to try and make the LAPD more acceptable. You have the power to make the LAPD into the entity it wants to be and the people want it to be. As always, I want to end by reminding you that we do not want drones. There are many reasons we do not want drones, and I wanted to mention one that you should think about, and that's money. It's true that drones will save hundreds of dollars in officer hours, less cops on the street, but the drones will cost thousands in litigation. The target of the drone is not the only one affected by them. The innocent bystanders will sue, and the taxpayers of this city will pay. On a personal note, I'm very pleased that you do not say the Pledge of Allegiance, and I hope you continue to not say it.
Mr. Hayes.
reading from Wikipedia. On January 26, 2007, a 14-year-old boy named Levert Parker Jr. was killed on his way walking home from school by a Blue Line train that was carrying his closest sister. This train is scheduled to go on the ground a half a block away from Crenshaw High School. The Institute for the Junior Blind is just up the street, and then there's another charter school at Slauson and Crenshaw. Every kid at Crenshaw knows they can outrun that damn train. In fact, I can outrun that damn train. So what does that import? We're too poor to save people's lives. In fact, money has always been more important than lives, always. There's a train stop at the mall at Crenshaw and Martin Luther King Boulevard. There's also another train stop 1 block away at Leimert Park. Leimert Park is currently a homeless encampment. The tents are there, the shopping carts are there. It cost $140 million with a train stop at Leimert Park. Now, any cop would say, you know, there's something wrong here. That's what a cop would say. That's what an intelligent citizen would say. And, of course, the train doesn't go to LAX. That's a damn lie. It goes the same place the Green Line goes to, aviation. But more importantly is the fact that these people are willing to kill us for graft, corruption, and kickback. Anyway, this is a campaign, and we're going to start it, launch it, and try to get rid of this train, put it underground. Incidentally, Beverly Hills sued the Red Line because it's underground on the edge of the Beverly Hills High School.
This concludes our public comment portion. We are now on item number 10, closed session. The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss item number 10A pursuant to Government Code 54957. 10B, conference with labor negotiator, discussion with the department's representatives, Commander Germala and Commander Blake, regarding the meet and confer process with the Los Angeles Police Protective League for implementation of a workplace mediation program, Government Code 54957.6A, and item number 10C pursuant to Government Code 54957.
Hi, I'm Shannon Leimert Park. You're watching LA City View, Channel 35, our city, our channel.
This is a famous image series of models from World War II. The sailor kissing a nurse